Iso announces to Sei-roi that she wants to work at Danbam, but he rejects her offer because he already hired someone else. Gun-soo walks out of the bar, and Sei-roi introduces her to his new hire, and she looks perplexed by this situation. Gun-soo thinks back to 11 years ago. Gun-won came home from school with a busted-up face. Gun-won released his anger on Gun-soo, who suffered the unfair beating. Gun-soo's mother ran out of the house and noticed her son's injured face, but she quickly brushed it off to head out for her shopping spree. 17-year-old Gun-soo asked his father to allow him to attend high school in Seoul on his own. When asked why he wants to leave Jang-jae, Gun-soo responds that nobody needs him here and that he also doesn't need anyone. President Jang reminds Gun-soo that he's an illegitimate child. He asserts that the weak can only survive by submitting to the strong. Gun-soo recalls Sei-roi accepting the consequences on his behalf and realizes that this is the first real adult he's met. Gun-soo only experienced this moment once, but that was enough for him. He asked Sei-roi for a part-time job. Sei-roi cleanly accepts Gun-soo as a new worker. Back to the present, Sung-kwon and Hyunhee return from their errands and meet the two delinquents in front of the bar. But Sei-roi introduces Gun-soo as their new employee. Inside, Iso makes the case for her as Danbam's manager. She asks Sung-kwon to serve their basic appetizer, and he reluctantly does so, per Sei-roi's orders. When he brings the soup dish, Iso stops him and asks what the problem is here. She points out how he holds the bowl from the edge with a finger on the inside instead of holding the bowl from the outside. Then, Iso flips through the menu and she calls the menu disorganized and says that she doesn't know what she should order. Next, Iso takes out her phone and pans around with the selfie camera. She says that their lack of concept is a secondary concern to the brightness inside and criticizes their fluorescent lighting. She asks for one of the best-selling dishes, which Hyunhee cooks up. Then, she takes a bite and says that the taste makes her want to gargle with soju. When Iso makes the staff move the tables around, they struggle to move the clunky and heavy tables. She shakes her head that they should account for parties joining tables and decides to stop there. She tells Sei-roi, "I'm someone you absolutely need on your path, and I came here voluntarily." Sei-roi acknowledges that her advice is helpful, but they can't accommodate an extra staff member with the current size of their bar. Iso argues that she's more valuable than some of his current staff, but Sei-roi refuses to cut his current staff to hire Iso. He asks why she wants to work here, and she has a feeling that he's worth betting her life on. He finds her response interesting and announces to the team that Jo Iso is Danbam's new manager. At Jang-jae Corp., Secretary Kim updates President Jang on Minyoung's increase in company shares. President Jang asks what her total percentage would be with her team, and Secretary Kim reveals that it would be over 25%, which is awfully close to President Jang's 30% shareholdings. At Danbam, Sung-kwon knocks down a wall to reveal unused space, proving Iso's point that they can expand with more tables. Then, Iso looks through the freezer and instructs Hyunhee to reduce their menu size. She asks Hyunhee where they learned to cook, and Hyunhee admits that they never had formal training. Iso bluntly comments that her food tasted that way and assigns her the task of deciding their signature dish. As the lights and decorations get their final touches, Gun-soo says that Sei-roi was working on the light fixtures all night, but still came in the morning to work on the rooftop. Iso joins Sei-roi on the rooftop and asks if he slept at all. He shares that he couldn't sleep, and Iso remembers his drunk confession that he can't sleep most nights. Iso helps Sei-roi hang the decorative plants and says that she hopes that he'll be able to sleep better. Sei-roi looks confused by her concern. The night before Danbam's reopening, Sei-roi pours a glass of soju for himself and for his father. On his phone, he monitors the Jang-jae stocks and looks at his watch. At Jang-jae the next day, Gun-won says that he wants a love marriage rather than an arranged marriage, but President Jang doesn't give him a choice, and that he will need the powerful in-laws to be a qualified heir to the Jang-jae throne. Gun-won doesn't protest further, and once he leaves, Secretary Kim tells President Jang that Gun-won likes Soo-ah. This is news to President Jang. Gun-soo catches Iso on their way to Danbam, and he asks Iso if her mother approves of her skipping college to work. He notes that she makes enough money through her blogs and wonders why she wants to work instead of going to school. Iso remembers Gun-won at the police station hinting at his involvement in the death of Sei-roi's father, and she asks if Gun-soo knows anything about his brother and Sei-roi's relationship. Gun-soo has no idea, and Iso decides not to meddle in another family's business. Gun-soo then wonders why Sei-roi hired Iso, and the Danbam team also wonder this. Sei-roi tells Hyunhee and Sung-kwon that he had a hunch, specifically an investment hunch. He says that he sensed a confidence with her, and they agree that she's good at her job. Iso and Gun-soo arrive, and Sei-roi decides that they can open now that their full team is here. Iso stops him and asks that they all put their hands in the group huddle. Everyone joins, and Iso thanks the team for trusting and following her lead, especially as a young 20-year-old manager. She pledges that they'll take over Itaewon, and they cheer for their first day. Waiting. Danbam's first opening night is a huge success, largely thanks to Iso's social media and blog postings. The line is out the door, and the bar comes alive with customers. From outside, Soo-ah observes the unexpectedly popular opening night. Inside, Iso catches Sei-Roi's eye. At the end of the night, Sei-Roi reports that they reached their peak profit today. Iso notes that the popularity is only temporary with their current marketing tactics, and they need to find a way to retain their current customer base. Sei-Roi asks who they do that, and Iso wonders the same thing but looks straight at Hyunhee, implying the answer. President Jang pays an unannounced visit to the Itaewon Jangga bar and taste tests the food. He compliments the chef on the food and acknowledges Sua's contribution to raising the bar's profits. President Jang comments on Sua's split loyalty between Minyoung and himself, and he explicitly asks her to be on his side. She assures him of her loyalty, and President Jang notes that Sua always says the right things. He challenges her to show her loyalty through actions, not mere words, and brings her to Danbam. Sua says that Danbam's popularity will be short-lived and won't be worth their time, but President Jang wonders if she truly believes those words or if she's being protective of her friend. Iso walks through Itaewon with Sei-Roi after closing time for most shops and suggests that they extend their hours past the last train departure. And they could also catch the workers from the closed shops. They run into Sua as they walk, and she tries to ignore them. Sei-Roi stops her and asks why she hasn't responded to his messages, and she says that she ignored them on purpose. She tells him not to contact her and walks off. Sei-Roi runs the kitchen on Hyunhee's day off, and he seems at ease with the load of orders and special requests. Sungkwan reports a slight dip in their profits, but it's still a success for a weeknight. They wrap up the night with dinner made by Sei-Roi, and Gun-soo compliments the soup as the best he's ever tasted. Iso seems to agree and asks how Sei-Roi picked the kitchen oppa, Hyunhee. He responds that they while working at a construction site, and says that Hyunhee made him a delicious meal once. Gun-soo suggests to Iso that they go to the club, and Sungkwan slides closer to them in interest. He asks the youth if the club is fun and admits that he's never been. He says he can't dance, and Iso says that he doesn't need to dance well in a crowd of people. Iso stands up to show him how to move to a rhythm. Sungkwan then asks if people grind and meet lovers at the club, and Good Iso assures him that it's normal for people go to the club to listen to music, dance, and meet people. Iso grabs Gun-soo for her demonstration and starts with the basics. She instructs Sungkwan to dance behind the person and raise his arms so that they're visible to the person he's courting. Iso assures him that he's passable. Grabbing Gun-soo again for the next step, Iso dances again and demonstrates that they'll make slight physical contact while dancing and never explicitly. Gun-soo looks quite uncomfortable being the subject of this demonstration. If the person looks back with disgust, you're done. If it's a go, then Iso says that he can make more physical contact, and she demonstrates on Gun-soo, who jumps in alarm. As a final step, Iso instructs Sungkwan to invite the person to a table for drinks, and she says that it's a guaranteed success. Gun-soo feels bad that Iso is duping him and offers to pay a portion of the bill, but Sungkwan insists that he'll cover the bill. They raise their glasses to Sungkwan's first club experience, and he stands up with a determined look, which cracks up with Gun-soo and Iso. He scans the dance floor and decides on his first target. He approaches the woman from behind and robotically dances with his arms outstretched, per Iso's instructions. Gun-soo and Iso watch from above. The woman turns around, and Sungkwan smiles. It's Hyunhee. Hyunhee's smile falls in recognition, but Sungkwan continues to dance and smile while throwing her some finger hearts. She calls Sungkwan by his name to ask what he's doing. He doesn't recognize her and says that he wants to know her better. She approaches him and gets up in his face while Gun and Sungkwan finally realizes that it's Hyunhee. Hyunhee shares that she's a transgender woman, and Iso asks if Sei-Roi knows. Hyunhee confirms that he knows, and she's saving up for surgery. Iso interrogates why she's at this club instead of a trans club. Hyunhee notes Iso's unexpectedly conventional perspective and responds that she can go to whatever club she wants. Noticing the discomfort, Hyunhee leaves and tells them to have fun. Gun-soo tries to stop her, but isn't sure what to call her. At a cafe, a group of young women find Iso's social media and notice that she's working at Danbam. They wonder why she's working when she could make money off of her blogs, and one girl, the high school bully, curses Iso for going on with life after ruining hers. At Danbam, a customer complains about hair in their food, and another group asks for salt for the unseasoned soup. Iso storms into the kitchen and relays the complaints. Iso harshly asks why Hyunhee works as a cook without any skills and suggests that she quit. Sei-Roi enters the kitchen to find out what's going on, and Iso storms out in frustration while Hyunhee remains silent. Iso confronts Sei-Roi about Hyunhee being trans, and he acknowledges that he knew since their construction site days. Iso asks why he hired her as a chef and points out the food as their greatest weakness right now. She says that Hyunhee needs to be fired, and we see Hyunhee listening from around the corner. Iso acknowledges Sei-Roi's kindness, but she can't accept a chef that is less skilled than the owner. She adds that Hyunhee being trans could also hurt their business, since this truth could be met with intolerance. Sei-Roi solemnly orders Gun-soo to bring Hyunhee. With Hyunhee at the table, he says that one of the biggest problems currently is Hyunhee's mediocre cooking, and Hyunhee nervously looks down. Sei-Roi says that Hyunhee must also know that they can't continue like this, and Hyunhee understands this. Roi hands Hyunhee an envelope of money. The envelope has Hyunhee's salary for the month. But then, Roi clarifies that he just gave Hyunhee twice the amount because they need twice the effort and value from her. He asks if she can do it, and Hyunhee nods. Iso starts to protest, but Roi looks to all of them to make something clear. He points out that Iso, Gun-soo, and Sungkwon recently caused Danbam to shut down while Hyunhee diligently did her job without causing harm to any of them. He asserts, just like you all, Hyunhee is one of my people. To me, that's important. If Hyunhee being transgender will disrupt your work, speak now. Whoever it is, I'll make a decision. Roi looks at each of his people and finally looks to Iso for her response. She surrenders to Roi's decision and Hyunhee promises to work hard. The next day, Iso walks to work and comments on how eventful Danbam life is. She's stopped by a trio of girls, led by the high school bully. The ringleader tries to provoke Iso, and Gun-soo steps in to stop them. Bully Baki grabs Iso and sees that she suffered a harsher punishment because she's a politician's daughter. To get revenge, Baki claims that she reported them to the police for underage drinking. And that fact triggers Iso, who asks if Baki was really the culprit. Baki insults the owner of Danbam for being a pushover, and Iso finally gives them the fight they've goaded for. Iso approaches Baki and pokes her, inciting a fight. When Baki pushes back, Gun-soo grabs her, and Iso slaps Baki, and the friend pounces. Without a blink, Iso slaps her to the ground. The last friend standing backpedals in fear. She grabs Baki's hair and slaps her repeatedly for the harm she caused to Danbam. And she recalls when Suwa admitted that she reported Danbam to the police, which was a lie. On the patio of the Jangjie bar, Suwa sees a police car, which reminds her of the night that she almost reported Danbam. She called the police but decided not to report the underage drinking. But as soon as she hung up, two girls recognized Iso inside the bar. It was Baki and her friend, and they reported the underage drinking to the police. Iso broods on the rooftop of Danbam, and Roi finds her on the rooftop and asks if she looks serious because of Hyunhee. Iso responds that someone who accepts losses because of attachment is called a pushover. She says that she'll honor his decision, but she won't change her opinion about the losses. He asks that she push and lead Hyunhee with honest feedback. Following Roi's orders, Iso gives her honest opinions on the food. Incohesive, bad aftertaste, and Hyunhee responds with adjustments. Gun-soo and Sungkwon observe the latest taste test nervously, but Gun-soo isn't too optimistic because Iso is so picky. After tasting the soup, Iso shares that she didn't understand why Roi wouldn't just fire Hyunhee and just followed his orders about giving feedback. But Iso says that the food is delicious. Hyunhee looks shocked and finally lets out a smile, and the nervous observers celebrate the achievement. Before Iso leaves the kitchen, she adds, "Your natural hair is prettier, Uni." Hyunhee looks touched and smiles at her breakthrough. Iso finds Roi outside the kitchen, and he acknowledges their achievement. She seems defeated that Roi knew that this would happen. Roi says that he trusted them. He pats her head to recognize her hard work, and she looks satisfied. Suwa drinks alone at a bar, and she drunkenly walks through the streets, thinking about Roi's acceptance of her decision to take Janga's scholarship. She's irritated by the straddling of loyalty and screams in the street. Roi grabs her and asks who's causing her annoyance. Suwa responds that it's Roi who's annoying her. He sweetly asks what's going on, and she asks for his honest thoughts, assuming that he finds her repulsive. Roi turns to his staff and tell them to go ahead without him, but Iso stays behind. She asks Roi to share how his business is doing so well, and he looks to Iso as he responds that he hired a talented manager. Roi tries to escort her home, but Suwa isn't done. She admits, "I'm not apologetic to you at all because I most value myself and am the fondest of myself. Is there something wrong with that?" Roi says that it's only natural, but Suwa calls bullshit. She feels insulted that Roi, an ex-convict who only graduated middle school, acts like he knows everything. He tells her to stop because no matter what she says, he won't be affected. He assures her, "You've done your best with your life, and you haven't done anything wrong." Suwa looks affected by his kindness and begs him not to say things like this. She starts to admit the truth and approaches him. "To me, you're always..." She doesn't finish her sentence as she goes in for the kiss, but she tells us, "Shining too much." Roi closes his eyes as Suwa closes in on him, but someone interferes. Iso clasps Suwa's face and pushes it away. "Defense," she calls it. She quotes criminal law on a kiss without consent being categorized as assault, and Roi looks mortified. Iso looks at Suwa with a hard look, determined to keep her strong defense.